bunch of crazy cats have to do with a stress management workshop? And the simple answer is, after all the research and all the years of studying, I think laughter still is the best medicine. So, let's start off. As Maureen kindly introduced me already, my name is Jade Friedson. I am a certified personal trainer and the lead fitness coach for TotalBodyFit. Now, I just wanted to assure all of you that you are not alone in the fact that you experience stress on the job. A Gallup poll conducted in the year 2000 said that 80% of the people they polled indicated that, yes, they experienced stress on the job, and that half of them felt that they really needed some kind of guidance on how to manage it. And they said that they feel 42% of their coworkers could also use that help. You aren't crazy. Americans are working longer and harder than ever before. In fact, we now work harder than any other industrialized nation in the world. Japan used to hold that distinction, but we've got them beat by 1 month, and Germany by 3. So you really aren't imagining this. We really are working longer and harder weeks. Absenteeism. This has escalated due to stress. A lot of last-minute no-shows. In fact, up to 1 million absences per day can be attributed just to stress alone. And this isn't just disgruntling for the employee. The employers are also suffering. It costs U.S. industry an estimated $300 billion annually due to job-related stress resulting in accidents, absenteeism, illness, and insurance claims. So I just wanted to sort of set the foundation that, hey, we all experience it, and no, you're not crazy. There's good reason for it. So we've said stress over and over and over again, but have we really clarified the definition? Stress gets a really bad reputation, and it shouldn't always, because we need to define that there are 2 types of stress. There's eustress, which is also known as good stress, and distress, the bad stress. The marquee of good stress is that your performance is enhanced or optimized. So I'll give you an example. Boss comes to you and says, you remember that project's due in 1 hour, right? You say, yes, absolutely, you'll have it on time. Boy, are you focused. You're razor sharp. You're bringing it on. You know, you're getting it done. And that is an example of eustress, okay? You're focused. Your performance is optimized. Now take your coworker who has that same project deadline. Their palms are sweating, their heart's racing. No matter what they do, they just can't concentrate on the project. Okay? Decreased performance, distress. Same project, 2 very different reactions. Why is that? Well, the easy answer is 2 different people, and it's not a cop-out, okay? Everyone has their own personal threshold for how much they're willing or can tolerate. And that's a fancy thing we term the personal stress horizon. Right? So next time you hear someone say, I've literally had it up to here, you're going to think to themselves, they've reached their personal stress horizon. Okay? So what determines where your horizon is, or what the threshold level might be? Well, 3 factors have been identified. Perception, how you view the world, your coping strategies, how you handle stress, and your resilience. That's how fast do you bounce back after a stressful event. The good news is here, we can definitely influence the first 2. Interesting story on the 3rd one, researchers have actually identified a resilience gene that determines your ability to bounce back. So that one we kind of can blame on the DNA. But the first 2, how does that get set? Where you come into this world with those certain settings of your personal stress horizon at a certain level. Interestingly enough, it starts when you are a fetus in your mother's womb. Okay? During the first trimester, the blood-brain barrier between the mother's blood and the fetus's brain is very permeable. So what mom is experiencing, that is how baby is developing. Now, let's take a very severe example. God forbid you're conceived in the middle of a war, right? So your mom's essentially in a war zone. Those stress hormones that we were talking about are probably circulating a mile a minute in mom. Guess what? It's going to the fetus's brain. That brain is saying, wow, I'm going to be born into war. I better be ready. I better have really good fight or flight responses. So that fetal brain registers its outside world is very threatening, and that stress response system is ready to fight and super sensitive. Okay, so that's one thing. Outside of the womb, first year of life, We're born with a certain number of synaptic connections. And in the first year of life, you go through a pruning process. I guess you could maybe think of when you do the art of bonsai and you prune the tree into a certain shape. That is exactly what is happening with your synaptic connections. You're pruning away half of all your synaptic connections, millions of them. Half of them disappear in the first year of life, and you are left with a structure. And that structure may be predisposed to stress. Because your first year of life, you had stressful experiences, and that's going to carry through for the rest of your years. So it's been implicated that what happens to you in the womb and what happens to you during your first year of life can really be telling on where your personal stress horizon might lie. Okay, jumped ahead of myself just a little bit. What I wanted to talk about first is why should we care? So if my personal stress horizon is a little bit lower than the guy next to me, maybe I suffer a little bit more anxiety, so what? Right? I mean, it's uncomfortable, but it is what it is. Well, Maria kind of already addressed some of these symptoms, and I'd like to go into a little more detail. So the adrenal fatigue, we mentioned that before. So similar to Maria's example of leaving a car engine running, and eventually stalls. Okay, when you're constantly in an emergency response system, you're stimulating the adrenals to a point where they actually can't even respond to the signal anymore. And that's what's called adrenal fatigue. Symptoms of adrenal fatigue can be reduced energy, poor mental function, loss of libido, hypoglycemia, also known as low blood sugar, and poor sleep patterns. Oh, and it continues. We have more. Your immune system also suffers. Why is that? We mentioned it in Maria's presentation, but why is that? So let's go back to when we were cavemen. Okay, we were worried about a few things. Not getting eaten alive by a saber-toothed tiger. That's great. And number two, where is our next meal going to come from? We were constantly, faced with the threat of starvation and famine. And so when we don't think we're going to get our next meal, cortisol comes out and says, we're going to starve. And all the emergency response systems are then turned on. So let's now call cortisol the anti-famine, anti-starvation hormone, okay? Remnant of our caveman times. So you're stressed out, your adrenal glands are stimulating all this release of cortisol. Your body's not thinking about fighting bacteria or viruses. Your body's thinking about where it's going to get its next source of energy from. It focuses away from viral protection and on energy. Okay, that's where your immune system is weakened. Starvation hormone, yeah, that's why it's hard to lose weight when you're really stressed out. Cortisol is working against all your best efforts to do that. You can also, as Maria mentioned, harm your digestion. Anyone suffering from IBS, stress could be implicated, blood pressure elevation, and interesting enough, cortisol has been implicated in additional deposits of fat in the body, particularly around the abdominal area. All right, hopefully I haven't completely scared you out of your wits, but the long-term consequences of chronic stress exposure, this is what I'm really concerned about, okay? This is why you need to worry about your stress threshold. Yeah, we talked about cortisol, but there's another little friend who comes out to play when you're very stressed out. His name is neuropeptide Y. A neuropeptide is simply a protein that comes from the brain that tells the cells to do certain things. And this guy goes over to your DNA and says to the enzymes working on repairing it, good day guys, go home, take a break. The repair enzymes stop. Your damaged DNA is not repaired. Damaged DNA is the #1 implication in all cancers in the human body. Okay? Neuropeptide Y isn't done. He still has some fun he wants to enact on your cells. He goes to genes that control diabetes, cardiovascular, or any other chronic health disease you want to think of, and says, hey guys, turn on. It's time to party. So yeah, he turns on those bad genes. Okay? So we have the DNA damage and we have turning on the genes that predispose you for those chronic health diseases. That's the long-term effect of chronic stress exposure. So you're thinking, that sounds awful, that sounds totally scary. Am I totally in trouble because I'm a stress case because my mom did not know how to take a chill pill? The answer is no. Okay, we mentioned that 2 of those factors are within your control to influence. So I'd just like to see a show of hands from the audience. Who here thought that they were going to come learn about exercise and envisioned a treadmill and somebody running and breaking a good sweat? The rest of you Didn't think about it at all? Yeah? Okay. Well, those who raise their hand, you are right. Okay? But our industry as trainers needs to recognize the role of mental exercise as well, not just physical. And it's very important, as Maria mentioned, put all the organic, wonderful, nutritious food you want in your body, but if the thought isn't behind it, if the positivity isn't behind it, you will not see the physical results. Let's talk about the role of mental exercise. That first factor, perception. You can influence the way you perceive your world, the way you perceive stress. Your frontal lobe of your brain is the part that intakes information from your five senses. You create a model of the world, your own reality. Every day, every new experience, that model is revamped. That is what creates your perception. To influence that, we need to become more self-aware. There's another part of the brain called the amygdala. This is where fearful or threatening memories are stored, the amygdala. When you're really stressed out, this is the brain center that takes over. Your reactions to things will be more fight or flight, will be overreactive, will be aggressive. How many of you have been slaving away at your computer, you're on deadline, you're in the middle of a really important email, and your coworker comes in and says, "Hey, what'd you have for lunch?" And you're like, "What? Lunch? Like I've had time to stop and eat." You know, you have a cushy job if you're getting lunch. And your coworker looks at you and is like, okay. So that was an amygdala response. Your frontal lobe wasn't answering your coworker. Your fear centers were. Was that an appropriate response? Probably not. You probably realize that. But realization is the first step to self-awareness. No, that was not an appropriate response. My amygdala made me do it, so this is really, really going to be helpful when you really anger a coworker. It's just not your fault. My amygdala made me do it. Have a fight with your spouse, loved one, boyfriend, girlfriend. It's not you. It's just that you really know how to turn off my frontal lobe. So recognize it's happening. Take a deep breath and allow your frontal lobe to take back over. I'd just like to take a quick break here to do a little activity. Please write down three things that you face every day that really stress you out. Next to each stressor, how do you feel? The feeling can be mental, can be physical. Just take a few moments, identify three stressors.